Mac Miller is truly one of the most influential artists of this generation. His music in itself is a reflection of his entire soul. Over the course of his tragically short 9-year career, Mac had released 10 projects, including 6 studio albums and 4 mixtapes, the last one being his posthumous release of Circles. Like many Mac Miller fans, I had come to peace with the fact that Circles would be his last true artistic project the world would ever hear. However, just this week, we found out there will be one final complete project that will be released. And by the end of this video, you guys will find out why Balloonerism is the final missing piece in Mac Miller's near-perfect discography.
Things like this ain't built to last. I might just fade like those before me.
But first, to understand why, we need to take it back to 2009. Rarely in an artist's life do they set sail on their path, while also knowing their destination. Mac Miller was no different. The retrospective piece 2009 off of Swimming was an insight into the year that changed the trajectory of his entire life. Unfortunately, this also triggers the events that will ultimately end his life. His early ascension into fame and fortune and everything that comes with it. The year 2009 was clearly the catalyst for everything that follows, launching 2 early projects that caught the attention of Pittsburgh-based music label Rostrum Records. This marks the official start of Mac Miller's professional music career.
I'm 18 years old. I have all the time in the world, and I'm still growing as an artist. Like, that's one thing that I always remember, is that, like, I'm still have so much to grow. I still have, like, and my music is still growing in itself. So, like,
you're going to TV.
Yeah, exactly. So that I just think it's important to know that that's the way it is.
The discography of Mac Miller, in my opinion, is one of the most raw and real discographies of any artist the world has ever seen. And I truly believe that the reason why so many people love this man's music is because they can find at least one project that truly resonates with them in a period of time in their life.
It's a beautiful thing, guys. It's a beautiful thing. Let me tell you something about music. It's beautiful. All right.
Whether it be youthful innocence on Kids, to newly budding exploration of love on The Divine Feminine.
It'll be alright, babe. See me, I got you covered. I'ma be your lover. You might be the one. If it's only tonight, babe.
All the way to the introspection and reasoning with one's own mortality on Circles, and everything in between. Myself, like many others, believe Mac Miller's discography was complete. The artistic work that he had produced somehow encapsulated his entire life, up to his final moments, allowing us to look at exactly what it was like to be Mac Miller. But there's a point in every man's life when they transition from being a boy to a man. And for Malcolm, I believe that year to have been 2014. Looking at his albums in a linear fashion, there's a clear shift in maturity, sound, and substance that happens in and around that year. The clear distinction between his projects from 2010 to 2013, as well as his projects from 2015 to 2020. I'm able to draw a clear line between them. Starting with Kids, Best Day Ever, Blue Slide Park, Macadelic, and Watching Movies with the Sound Off. These projects are just the start of his journey. The newfound fame, fortune, friends, and everything that comes along with that. It is truly a coming-of-age era for the Pittsburgh artist, bringing him and his fans on a journey that starts with childish and braggadocious bars and leads him to experimenting with introspection and the meaning of life, something that we all have been through at one point or another. Mac is clearly growing up from one record to the next, and us as fans got to see that in real time. This also happens to be every project he released under Rostrum Records. Furthermore, the projects released from 2015 to 2020 signify his transition into a man. They're much more mature, polished products with a cohesive tone, message, and concept. specifically talking about Good AM, the Divine Feminine, Swimming, and Circles. This era signifies adulthood for Malcolm, fully realizing and understanding his meaning in life, his calling and purpose, and giving us real insight into his personal battles and addictions as a 27-year-old man who's also dealt with a lot of these same issues. I can clearly see his intentional shift in tone. These projects display one of the most stark character changes I've ever seen in an artist, bringing his fans along for the ride as he embarked on his new and more purposeful journey, capping it off with the posthumous release of Circles, an album about acceptance, peace, and clarity on what was coming.
Come on, guys. Let's show you how we do this.
This has been the hardest thing to accept as a fan of his, but it felt as if he knew what the next step was, and he was speaking directly to us, letting us know that he was okay with it. Look, I've been listening to Mac since I was 14. He's been my favorite artist since like 2011. I mean, I even went to my first concert, Mac Miller. I didn't know exactly why I was drawn to him, but I just was. And I know a lot of you guys also feel that exact same way, which is why it was so hard to come to terms with the fact that I would just never get to hear another one of his projects. And I couldn't tag along anymore to see how his story would progress. But after listening to his music more and internalizing his lyrics, I kind of understood. It was what he wanted. He was okay with it. But a lot of you guys are probably confused because I left out a pretty big project, one that a lot would consider his magnum opus, Faces.
Yeah, should've died already. Faces. I should've died already. Shit, faces.
Well, now that we all understand his progression, we are finally ready to take a look at the most pivotal time in his life. 2013 to 2014, I can only assume, was one of the hardest years of his life. At only 22 years old, he had experienced and achieved almost everything he had set out to do. Mac was grappling with depression, anxiety, addiction, heartbreak, and loss. He was also grappling with his evolving maturity and new priorities in life. This drew him to move into his new LA home and in-house studio known as The Sanctuary. The Sanctuary wasn't just about getting space. It was a place where he could escape the world and all the pressures that came with it. The fame, personal struggles. It was a time where Mac was truly trying to find out who he was, not just as an artist. Escaping the world and allowing him freedom to feel and explore himself in a way that most people never do. It also comes at a time in most young men's life when they're fundamentally changing as a human being. I remember when I had that. Mac was drawn to this secluded lifestyle, in part to focus on personal challenges and reflect on his life, but also to explore avenues of art and music that he really had never explored before, inviting other artists to join him at times in the Sanctuary to make truly beautiful music. He lived in the studio, ate in the studio, slept in the studio, and even had a bathroom installed so he could shower in the studio. His life was dedicated to his craft and finding his true self.
I have a tendency to really drown myself in my work. Do you know what I mean? Like nothing else exists, and I think it's just kind of like perspective actually adds to the whole process, because you want to talk about life, so you have to live a little, you know?
During this time, Mac Miller reportedly worked on 2 specific projects, one of them being Faces, widely considered one of his best pieces of work ever. A deep, introspective, experimental work that marks an extreme shift in his artistic style, blending psychedelic beats with his views on life and his personal journey. I still revisit this mixtape often, because it's one of his best pieces of work and gives me some of the most insight into the actual life of Mac Miller. It touches on his struggles with substance abuse, fame, and inner flaws. He walks a fine line between the duality of his highs and lows, and is still to this day his most personal project. However, the original project that he compiled while at the Sanctuary is an unreleased and lost project known as Balloonerism. Over the years, there has been a ton of speculation as to what exactly it entails. Most Mac Miller fans don't even know that it exists, which is why the world got such a shock this past week when it got announced it was coming soon. There have even been leaks of some tracks from the project over the course of the last few years. Producers and artists close to Mac have revealed that it's the darkest project he ever worked on, and it's experimentally raw, giving listeners a look directly into the mind of Malcolm. Colors and Shapes is even said to have been taken from Balloonerism and placed on Faces. This is why Balloonerism is so important. Very rarely do we get to take a look into the mind of an artist during the most pivotal moments of their life. His most vulnerable moments were during that year in the Sanctuary. And Balloonerism, a complete project of the deepest and darkest thoughts that he was not quite ready to share with the world yet.
This type of thing always goes around. Still take a little time to break it down. You got something you can say it now. Cause you always got a lot. And I swear that I was better. Yeah.
Sometimes I start saying something and I'll be like, ooh, not there. Let me not go there. Or you know what I mean? I don't know. I guess I try and do whatever's natural. And if I'm writing a super dark verse, I'll lay it down. And then decide if that's where I want the song to go.
And just so I understand, why would be, if you write something really dark, what would be your reason not to think it would be right?
I don't think that that's the only aspect of life.
A deep, troubling, and crippling addiction, heartbreak, self-realization, loneliness, and uncertainty if he would even survive outside those four walls. In my opinion, Balloonerism is the catalyst and one of the reasons we were able to even experience any of his albums going forward. Faces, Good AM, The Divine Feminine, Swimming, and Circles. None of that happens without this. And that's why Balloonerism is the missing piece to Mac Miller's near-perfect catalog. And I trust the Mac Miller estate to remaster production and put out the exact track list that they believe Mac would have wanted. There are even reports that Balloonerism was completed and even had around 250 physical copies made, intending for it to be his next release after watching movies with the sound off. Yet reportedly was rejected by Rostrum Records in what I can only assume because it was dark. And for the longest time, I've always wanted to know what changed him. And this might give me that answer. But I don't believe in listening to leaks, especially not from people that have passed. And I mean, I've seen too many estates and labels cash grab and try to milk the fans out of as much as they can. But in this case, if you know anything about Mac Miller's family and estate and the posthumous releases they've allowed, they would not have announced this if it wasn't exactly what he wanted. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I can't wait to experience one more final project from him for the first time again. If you enjoyed the video, I simply just ask subscribe. Helps me out a lot. And if you're a fan of Mac Miller, let me know in the comments which album impacted your life the most. We all have one. So let me know. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Booze out.
Will we die? This life isn't fair. I miss the high. I live a lie. And one day we'll die. No one will care. Take me inside. I'll meet you there.